So let's go over some FAQ questions. So the first one, which is probably the most important, are coffee enemas safe or are they dangerous? There's a lot of reports that you can read online in Wikipedia and other places that report on the potential dangers of coffee enemas. I think that most of these reports are totally theoretical. There may be a few singular events that have occurred that created potentially harmful situations for people. These are extremely, extremely rare. Generally speaking, the vast majority of people can do coffee enemas safe and effectively. I think that this is, there's evidence of this throughout history, from Gerson doing them in the early 1900s to William Donald Kelly, Nicholas Gonzalez, all who did coffee enemas daily, recommending them at least twice a day, if not more than that, up to 4 or 5 times a day for years, for patients that were extremely ill. We're talking stage 4 cancer, metastatic, highly compromised, highly toxic individuals, doing them multiple times a day. And not only were they safe, but they were also highly effective in reversing the entire disease process. They're a pillar of those programs. So I think that that long history being used in a clinical setting is the best evidence to show that, generally speaking, they're safe for the vast majority of people. Now, you will see people raise questions like, well, can't coffee enemas perforate my colon? Meaning they're going to basically puncture the colon wall, when you insert the tip, or like irritate or like scrape the inside of the colon. I've never experienced this myself. I've done tons of enemas over the course of multiple years, and remember, the tip that we use is very flexible. It's silicone. In all the times I've done enemas personally, I've never felt any sensation as I'm putting the tubing in and feeding it up into my colon, even that 16-inch length. So I think all of these potential comments and questions about the chances of perforation of your colon is just hot air. Unless you're using some crazy equipment, the vast majority of tips that I've seen that you actually use to insert into your body are either rubber, silicone, or plastic. Some can be hard plastic. I don't recommend those. I recommend using the soft, flexible silicone that are thin, like the ones I've showed you. So using the right equipment, there should be no concern about this at all. That all being said, there are definitely some contraindications for certain medical conditions. So if you're having severe diarrhea, this would be a bad idea. If you have any bleeding of your colon, meaning your colon wall is bleeding, there's ulceration of your colon, bleeding hemorrhoids, anal fissures that are bleeding, all of these conditions, you're going to want to avoid enemas because that can make the bleeding worse. There's not an absolute contraindication when it comes to something like hemorrhoids. You can do them, but you just don't want to do them when they're inflamed and irritated, and definitely when they're bleeding. You want to be aware of doing enemas when you have irritable bowel disease like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. Again, this isn't an absolute contraindication for those illnesses in general, but definitely if you're in a flare situation where your colon is highly sensitive and inflamed, you're going to want to avoid doing enemas. Enemas can be done with an ostomy bag. There's a method of doing that. So if you want to do them, consult with your provider to figure out how to do that properly, but there, of course, are some cautions around doing that. So be aware of that particular situation. Definitely any condition in which you're having any failure of your respiratory system, kidney system, or cardiovascular system, like heart failure, kidney failure, etc. Obviously, this is going to overload the entire system with fluid and cause a burden on the system. So anytime you have a serious condition like this, you definitely have to consult with someone first. You want to be aware of doing enemas or any detoxification routine for that matter when you're pregnant. There are some doctors that do recommend enemas during pregnancy. There's kind of a mixed opinion about that. Many doctors are highly against doing any detoxification when you're pregnant because the fetus can be exposed to the dumping of toxins into your bloodstream because the fetal bloodstream is connected to the maternal bloodstream, so there may be an exposure that can happen to the growing fetus. You're going to have to discuss with your particular provider whether that is something that's going to be safe and recommended for you if you're pregnant. Any condition that is going to overstimulate the system, especially if you have very high blood pressure, very high heart rate, obviously you're not going to want to do something that has caffeine in it, even though the caffeine effects aren't as strong as drinking coffee. Anything that's going to push your system too far is something that you're going to want to avoid. And lastly, you want to be aware of doing enemas after any recent surgery. Of course, it depends on the surgery, it depends on the situation, but definitely if there's any surgical wound that's healing in any area of your abdomen, digestive system, pelvis, etc., then you don't want to irritate that area by any means. So you need to be aware of that as well. So that brings us to who would benefit from coffee enemas. I generally think that almost anyone can benefit from enemas, whether you're using them preventatively, just kind of at regular intervals, or as needed. Enemas are great for hangovers. They're great for if you're acutely ill and you're trying to detoxify your system with an illness. If you ate something that's not sitting right with you, anything like that where you're trying to, just cleanse the digestive tract, enemas are great. And then, of course, as part of a comprehensive program in which you're trying to reverse some chronic problem. We have 4 pillars in our model: nutrition, detoxification, lifestyle, and mind-body. And detoxification is a very important pillar for any chronic issue that you're trying to overcome, because with almost any chronic disease, there's going to be some compromise in your body's detoxification capacity. When the detoxification systems are weakened and there's too many toxins coming into the system without enough toxins leaving the system, those are going to be stored and back up and cause all sorts of imbalances and dysfunction. So doing detoxification, opening up those channels, is part of a holistic program to reverse disease. So we recommend them all the time for almost anything. That being said, for chronic illnesses, I think the illnesses that would benefit the most from enemas are digestive disorders of all different kinds, any toxicity a state condition like an environmental toxicity, immune sensitivity to various foods and allergens, asthma, allergies, autoimmune conditions where the immune system is hypersensitive, inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and things like this, chronic degenerative diseases like cancer, definitely hormone imbalances and skin disorders as well, which oftentimes have a toxicity component. When the liver is burdened, that prevents the body from metabolizing hormones properly. Oftentimes toxicity that the body can't process is going to actually manifest in the skin as skin disorders. So any of these situations are, would benefit greatly from detoxification like coffee enemas. There's many detoxification routines that you could theoretically do, but coffee enemas are really beneficial because they're cheap, they're easy, you can do them daily, they're very powerful, but they're also very gentle. So as far as the totem pole of at-home detoxification routines you could do, like saunas, castor oil packs, baths, hot and cold wraps, foot baths, things like this. Coffee enemas are definitely high up in their effectiveness for overcoming chronic problems. Many people want to know, how often should I do coffee enemas? Again, if you're overcoming a really serious problem like cancer, doing them daily, multiple times a day, would be highly beneficial and recommended. Again, you have to consult with your practitioner before you do anything. This is not medical advice, but generally speaking, for those kinds of conditions, doing them very frequently is beneficial. For most people, whether you're trying to heal a chronic problem or whether you're trying to do them for prevention, I think doing enemas anywhere between 1 to 3 times a week is great. Doing them once a week on weekends, wonderful. Twice a week is a really nice way to kind of split up the week and do them regularly. Or you can do them every other day, which looks like 3 times a week. Any of those amounts, I think, is a nice sweet spot where you're going to be getting a lot of benefit that's going to have cumulative effect over time. Of course, you can just do them as needed. If you'd like to just have your kid around and do them every once in a while, whatever you want to do, depending on your goals, you can do that. So what time of day is best to do coffee enemas? Definitely the best is right in the morning when you wake up. You're in a fasted state. Your body has been detoxifying all evening long while you're sleeping. So doing an enema right when you wake up is going to kind of finish that process along. It's going to stimulate the metabolism of those toxins that your body's been working on all evening. And you're in a fasted state. So your digestive system is largely cleared out besides the stool that's in your colon at that time. So that's going to have the highest beneficial effect for sure. Definitely doing them on an empty stomach in general is preferable. If you have food in your stomach, your body is going to be working to break down that food, and then doing an enema at that time is not going to have the impact that you're really looking for. You could theoretically do it. I don't think it would be harmful, but there's just a lot better times to do it. I would wait a few hours after your meal for sure before doing an enema. Another good time to do them would be the afternoon, a number of hours after lunch before dinner, because you're in kind of a longer semi-fasted state if you wait a few hours after lunch. Generally speaking, you don't want to do enemas after 3 p.m. if you're caffeine sensitive particularly. That brings us to the next question is, do coffee enemas affect people that are caffeine sensitive? Generally speaking, the caffeine effects from an enema are much, much less than the caffeine effects from drinking coffee. I personally am very susceptible to caffeine myself. I find that coffee enemas definitely give me a slight stimulation, but nothing like I experience when I actually drink coffee. There is an individual susceptibility. Some people are quite sensitive. And if you are sensitive, there's a few things that you can do. Definitely doing them in the morning and not in the afternoon. Diluting down the coffee. So you can just do the enema solution with only 1 tablespoon of coffee instead of 2 tablespoons. That will make it more dilute. That's totally fine. Some people are not going to be able to do coffee for a variety of reasons. They have a particular sensitivity to coffee. It's just too stimulating for them. So there's a few other alternatives that you can do if coffee's not going to work for you. Number 1, chamomile tea enemas. You can brew some homemade chamomile tea using the chamomile flowers and do an enema that way. That's an old Gerson trick, highly effective, very gentle, very calming to the nervous system with the chamomile. You can do wheatgrass enemas. Pure Life Enema sells a wheatgrass powder that you can mix in the water, do the enema that way. You're going to get vitamins, minerals. It's very alkalinizing and detoxifying without having the stimulatory effect That's a great option. You could do bentonite clay enemas with liquid bentonite, a couple tablespoons in the water solution, and then do the enema that way. Bentonite is a binder, so it binds toxins to have help the release of them more efficiently and effectively. So doing a bentonite enema is a great way to kind of squelch, if that's a word, the toxins out of the colon to eliminate. And then, don't disregard or discount just a warm water enema. You could put a little salt in there or some minerals if you'd like to mineralize the water. But even just warm water enemas are wonderful, have a nice gentle effect. They're not going to be nearly as potent as some of the other options, but still great to do. Some people want to know, are coffee enemas messy? Generally speaking, no. I rarely have any mess that I have to worry about. Of course, I put a towel down, as you saw in the video. Sometimes there can be, a little bit of coffee that spills out somewhere. But, some people have this idea that the coffee is just going to basically, pour out of their butt somehow. Like there's just going to be like a continuous flow that's going to be, super messy, get all over the floor. People have trouble understanding, well, how does the coffee stay into my colon? And really it's simpler than you think. Once the coffee is going in, your rectum is going to hold the coffee inside of your body. You're not going to have the impulse to go until your body is ready to go. So you'll be able to hold the coffee just fine as it's flowing in. You pull the tube out, you chill. Nothing should come out in that whole process. And then when your body's ready to go, you'll get the urge and you'll go. There's not any situation I've found where I've been unable to hold it. Like there's been such an urgency and such like a powerful, stimulation to my colon where I can't make it to the toilet. So any preconception that you have of that, I just want to put you at ease. It's a lot easier and cleaner than you think. A lot of people want to know, what am I going to experience after a coffee enema? Generally speaking, you feel light, very clear-headed, oftentimes euphoric, because the glutathione upregulation that happens and the toxin dump that occurs. You feel really cleaned out and just really clear and bright. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It really sets up the day really well. You might get some stimulation, so it should increase your energy as well, but there should be no negative consequences. Sometimes you might experience a little nausea. That probably will happen if your body is really toxic, or you're really dealing with a toxicity issue or a liver congestion issue. If that's a problem, you can always drink some liquid bentonite before taking the enema. That's going to bind the bile that's released when you do the enema, because bile can oftentimes be nauseating if too much is released and it's really toxic. So that bentonite clay will bind that up and should decrease nausea significantly. But that's rare. Most people don't experience any negative consequences. Another question is, how close do I have to remain to the toilet after I'm done with the enema? Like, is it an all day or an all morning process? Typically speaking, you'll get everything out, when your body tells you it's time to go. And you might find that you need to sit back on the toilet a couple times after you're done, just to get some additional, waste out of your system. Generally speaking, that doesn't last very long. Again, it's not like something urgent that, you're gonna have to like be right next to the bathroom. You can go to work, you can do whatever you need to do, and generally it's fine after a little bit of time has passed when you're done. Another common question is, how often do I need to replace my kit? Again, the bag should last you really indefinitely if you care for it and it's not damaged. The tubing is really easy to replace as long as you take care of it with the soap, grapefruit seed extract, clean it out with the brush. You should be able to keep your tube in good working order, and I don't have to replace my tubing for months, even when I'm doing regular, multiple times a week enemas. But eventually you'll see some scum in the inside, or kind of a staining effect that will happen. So whenever you're ready to replace the tubing, it's cheap and easy to do so.